Hello everyone, I'm back with another review, and this time this is game 4 of Nishiyama Tomoka's professional entrance exam. I didn't end up doing a review for game 3, but she ended up losing that game, so her back is against the wall. If she loses this game, she's not a pro. Um, Now, her opponent in game 4 is Miyajima Kenta, and Nishiyama has Sente, so let's see what she can do with it. So she starts off with going pretty much directly to third file rook. I was actually pretty happy to see this because it's really her bread and butter. I think it's what she's known for the best. And when she's tried central rook, fourth file rook in her some of her other games, they haven't gone quite as well. So I was really happy to see her kind of go back to her bread and butter and really, when her life is on the line, she's gonna go with third file rook. So I was really happy to see it. So here is like a major branching point of the game, generally speaking, of static rook versus arranging rook. And basically it's about which pawn are you going to push. If you push the fifth file pawn, you're generally going to play a bit more defensive. And if you push the seventh file pawn, you're trying to be a little bit more aggressive. Um, so here, Miyajima goes ahead and pushes the fifth file pawn. And Nishiyama goes ahead and starts to develop her silver in case he starts to try and go for an Anaguma. She can go ahead and start her attack. And so Miyajima goes ahead and decides to bring the silver in. Nishiyama's going to complete her Mino. And then Miyajima decides to go ahead and push the seventh file pawn. And this basically indicates, okay, he's actually going to attack. So he was kind of leaving his options open at the start and decided, okay, I want to go for an attack. So in response, Nishiyama completes the full Mino castle, and Miyajima goes ahead and brings his silver out to attack. And Nishiyama's kind of just doing standard things, and Miyajima starts to play kind of a couple waiting moves. He's waiting to see what Nishiyama's going to do, because in a way, her development of her side of the board is pretty much complete. And so he's going to try and almost like play waiting moves, force Nishiyama to fix some part of her camp, and then at the right moment, initiate his attack. And this is the moment that Miyajima picks. With both of these pawns pushed, there's another attacking line against Mino castles. And especially with this second pawn pushed, there's another potential attacking line that opens up this way. So this is something you'll see pretty often. Even if you're trying to attack relatively quickly, sometimes it's good to wait and make your opponent make some moves, right? Pawns can't move backwards. And it just sometimes is going to help you with your attack, opening up more attack lines and options. So yeah, he goes ahead and pushes the seventh file pawn. This is a pawn you don't want to take. If you take, it brings the silver up. And now you really can't defend the second file against this attack anymore. So instead, Nishiyama goes ahead and pushes the fifth file pawn, says, all right, go ahead, take the pawn. And this is actually a very common pattern that you're going to see after this pawn gets traded. The silver is technically hanging, so you go ahead and attack it with the rook. Now here, Nishiyama goes ahead and counterattacks the silver. You don't really want to retreat the silver. You can get into a pretty bad spot, even though it's tempting. And now all of a sudden you're really on the back foot. And, you have this attack again. Yeah, so Nishiyama knows this and goes ahead, counterattacks on the sixth file. And Miyajima decides to trade bishops. And then retreat the silver. And Nishiyama decides she wants to trade rooks as well, and Miyajima obliges. And I was actually pretty happy to see this for Nishiyama. Obviously, I'm rooting for her. I was happy to see this because I think, this is just my opinion, is that she's really the strongest in these types of games when it's, in Japanese, they would call it sabakiai, where both players kind of trade off their pieces. All their pieces are kind of in the game, and it kind of becomes a battle of who's going to attack faster and more efficiently. So in this game position, Nishiyama has an advantage of her castle is better, right? So these defensive pieces are much better coordinated. Whereas in Miyajima's side, you can see like this is nothing is really protecting this except for the king, and the coordination between these general pieces is not very good. Miyajima's advantage in this position is that it's his turn to move, so he kind of gets that first mover advantage. So he really needs to make this next move count, or Nishiyama's going to get an advantage. So he decides to drop this bishop. I believe it was the top move of the engine. And Nishiyama meets it with a bishop drop. So he was threatening to promote. And he goes ahead and decides to trade, and then he drops a bishop, or sorry, sacks a pawn to 7-6, and Nishiyama takes. And if you compare this position now to the position that there was before, Nishiyama's advantage is kind of gone. Her defensive pieces are kind of all over the place. So now Miyajima's camp is a little bit more stable. And so now Miyajima needs to take advantage of what he has now and go ahead and find a nice attack. And he starts with this rook drop, forking these lance and the knight. And also, in a way, it's also going to attack the silver. So this is actually a moment where Nishiyama really needed to come up with a good move, and she found it. She found the best move, which is silver back to 6-7. And I believe a lot of the professional commentary was saying this move really shows Nishiyama's class, and especially her understanding of these types of positions. It's not a super intuitive move. To take a move that really doesn't actually defend any of the pieces that are being attacked, and instead kind of retreat a silver. This is actually a great move. So first of all, you can't take the knight because of bishop drop on 6-6. Way too powerful. And the other thing it does is it makes sure that this silver becomes useful. So if you don't move this silver back and say, okay, well, we're just going to attack each other, a lot of the time, this silver is going to be a useless piece in the game. It's not participating in the attack this way, and it's not participating in defending. It's just kind of a dead piece. And so what Nishiyama is able to do, with this retreating move, is to make sure that this silver is going to get back and participate in the defense of her king. So Miyajima goes ahead and starts the edge attack, and then goes ahead and captures the lance that he wants to use in this edge attack that he's set up. And here Nishiyama goes ahead and drops her rook to start the counterattack, and Miyajima continues with his plan to attack the edge. And now Nishiyama makes another move, I think very counterintuitive, right? So your opponent is setting up a gigantic attack on the other side of the board, and you decide to take a turn to capture a pawn on the other side of the board. Why? This is a move I would never think of, but it actually has two gigantic ideas, one gigantic threat and one really nice move to slow down her opponent's attack. So the first is bishop drop on 6-6. Again, same idea. It's going to fork. And now in this case, it actually kills the edge attack as well. And the other idea is pawn drop on 7-9, which blocks this rook's influence on the back rank. So again, this got a lot of praise in the professional commentary. I agree. It's a very counterintuitive move, but it opens up, two really nice moves that you really want to play in the position, which is this bishop drop and this pawn drop. So Miyajima goes ahead and defends against the bishop drop, and Nishiyama goes ahead and takes her other option, which is the pawn drop. And Miyajima decides to go ahead and strengthen the coordination of his castle, right? So when the gold is back here on 5-2, this gold is very weak. So in this boat castle structure, a very common attack, for example, is to maybe drop a lance, sack it on 2-3, and then the gold hangs. So to prevent that type of attack and make sure that he's solid while he goes for this edge attack, he decides to go ahead and slide the gold over. So while the castle is a bit stronger, there is a downside, which is that now you're completely blocked off. And you are opening up this edge. So if you ever get counterattacked on the edge, this could be a bit painful that you've kind of locked yourself in. And Nishiyama here also says, well, if you're going to strengthen your king, I will as well, and goes ahead and makes another backward silver move. And now, like, the coordination between here is just super strong. And both players are going to have a hard time attacking, and really it's going to come down to what happens, I think, on the edge. And yeah, Miyajima goes ahead, does his edge attack, but it kind of just gets defended. It was a little bit strange to me. Really, if you look at what happened, he basically decided to trade off these 2 lances for the 1 lance, and the other one just kind of gets taken. I mean, the engine thinks that the evaluation is about the same. I mean, now the king is definitely much weaker, and you've kind of broken through on the edge. But then Miyajima goes ahead and drops this pawn on 8-4, and it's kind of admitting that he doesn't have enough ammo to make this edge attack work, right? He's saying, I really need to grab this knight to help my edge attack. And Nishiyama sees this and says, okay, all I have to do is make sure that you don't get any more pieces because your edge attack doesn't work. Goes ahead and runs the king. I'm not 100% sure why he didn't just take on 8-5 because his whole plan was to capture this knight, but he decides, okay, go ahead. One time I'm going to go ahead and drop this lance. I think the idea is it's actually threatening a bishop drop on 1-9, and we're going to actually see this come into play because Nishiyama makes really the one mistake that she made in this whole game, which is bishop drop on 6-6. Technically, it's 2 moves were mistakes, but they have them back to back and are the same idea. And her idea is, okay, I'm threatening the dragon, so the dragon has to run, and it does. And now I get to just take this pawn, and your idea of adding this knight to the edge attack, I've completely erased it. The problem with this is that this lance is threatening, and bishop drop 1-9 is a gigantic threat. And I think this is why the engine did like this lance drop 1-1 move, even though it didn't quite make sense to me from a flow of the game perspective. Interestingly, though, Miyajima doesn't drop the bishop, and instead takes the pawn on 8-7, saying, hey, I really want this knight. So I'm not sure if it was just like indecisiveness or what, but there was a bit of a strange series of moves. And again, like it's relatively engine approved. I think it was the second best move. But then Nishiyama really starts fighting back. Lance drop on 2-6, right? This idea of sacrificing the lance is always an idea, and she now has 2 lances, so she can actually even just double stack these lances and attack from this side, ignoring these defensive pieces. So Miyajima goes ahead. Okay, he finally got his knight. But then Nishiyama goes for the gold here and basically sacks her bishop on 5-1. Obviously, it's being attacked, so she needs to move it at some level. She decides basically for the most aggressive option. Now, you don't really want to take because it just lets him recapture and promote. And you can see none of the pieces that he has in hand are good defensive pieces. So, for example, if Miyajima had another gold in hand, you'd probably take, and then just drop a gold right back, because then Nishiyama has to waste the move running her dragon away. But because the pieces that you're going to have in hand aren't very good to defend with, this is you usually want to just like ignore it and set up a counterattack. Now, what Miyajima decides to do is actually to defend the position with his dragon. His idea is, well, I'm not getting through this from this side with my dragon anyway. Let me retreat it and have it participate in defending the king. And I'll attack on the edge. Which is interesting. It's not like a terrible idea. It's just a tactical blunder in this situation. Because of this move, Lance takes on 2-3. Now this was set up, very long time ago, and I think he kind of just forgot about it because in his mind this is double defended and you can't take. But when you sack the lance, I mean the king has to take. It's the only move in the position, and now horse takes on 4-1 comes with check on the king, and the king can't recapture. So here he has to recapture the gold, and now the rook gets to run away from the dragon. From the dragon, while taking the gold, and now Miyajima's king is in a ton of trouble, whereas Nishiyama's king is really completely safe. Even if there's an attack on the edge, there's so much room to run everywhere. That I think in this position, it's very, very clear. Nishiyama has pretty much a decisive advantage. So really, she just needs to close out the game and find a few more good moves, and she'll be able to win the game. And Miyajima decides, okay, I need to bring, my whole idea was to bring the dragon back and have it participate in the defense. I need to get rid of this dragon and try and stabilize my kingside. But here, Nishiyama finds the absolute game-sealing move, gold sack on 2-4. This was a really nice move, and it's the only move that has a completely decisive advantage. I mean, the position even here is, for professional players' perspective, it's pretty much winning. But once you find this move, gold on 2-4, I think there's really no coming back for Miyajima. So the idea is to go ahead and drop the lance. The only way to defend this position is to drop the pawn, but then you get to also sack the lance. And you get to really pull the king forward and then trade. And here, Miyajima kind of just flails for a couple moves, essentially. And then here he just gives up because this is a mate in 5. And in this position, Miyajima resigned. And Nishiyama has tied her series 2-2 in the pro entrance exam. And she's going to get to fight again in the final game. And if she wins that game, she gets to become a full pro, which is super exciting. Now, really quickly, I want to go back and just explain the gold sack a little bit. It's really the only move. So you might think in this type of position, you're going to want to start with the lance, right? It's with check. You get to drop it from a distance. But in this case, you can actually drop the pawn on 2-4. And even if you try and do the same idea, well, let me just pull the king forward, right? Yes, if it takes, you can do the same idea. The problem is if you drop the lance and then the gold, the king actually doesn't have to take this gold and can retreat. And now you have a game again. So it was very accurate of Nishiyama to go ahead and sack the gold first. Because as you see in this case, the king has to take the lance here. If you move back, there's gold drop on 2-3, his mate. Like something like this. Obviously, the king can't run to 2-3 because this is a lance, not a gold. And if you go back, then pawn drop is just completely winning. So yeah, Nishiyama goes ahead, pulls the game out. And in her 5th game, I believe it's scheduled, not quite yet, but it's going to be in January. So I'm super looking forward to that. Hopefully, I'll be maybe able to do even a live stream of the whole game. But yeah. If you're looking forward to it, make sure you're subscribed so you see my review of that game as well.